And we're back with another episode of the Talking with Branders podcast brought to you by Branders Magazine. And I am here with one of my favorite people to talk with. And every time we chat, our conversations are so spirited and energetic that I get off on such a high. The one and only Laura Thomas, VP and Head of Strategy at Petermayer. Hi, Laura. Welcome.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you. Thanks for having me join this. I'm excited.
Oh, of course. Before we get into, and I have a whole list on my legal pad of great questions and prompts, give our audience like the 60-second elevator pitch on who you are, where you come from, where you're going, and everything in between.
Sounds great. So as Stephen mentioned, I'm Laura Thomas, Head of Strategy at Petermayer. I've been with Petermayer about a year now. Come to Petermayer with about 25 years of experience. I've worked in, I'm located actually in Cincinnati, Ohio. So you can imagine my whole background. About 17 years was working in the, with P&G and a lot of CPG brands. So Pampers and Olay and a lot of femcare, which is not super fun party talk, but spent about 10 years in femcare. And have also done like Brooks Running Shoes and Holland America Cruise Lines and now Petermayer. So we work with Delaware North, which is a lot of the national parks. We actually just won that recently. Hancock Whitney. We have a whole breadth of brands we work with. So that's my elevator pitch.
I love how you were like, I'm in Cincinnati, so obviously I've worked with Procter & Gamble because you can't, throw a stone or walk down the street without hitting a Procter & Gamble brand or representative or whatever.
You can't. I mean, it's the lifeblood of the city. We have a huge history with P&G and I loved it. I mean, I cut my teeth with some of the biggest billion-dollar brands known to the world. So, I was traveling internationally in my 20s, for femcare brands, being, sort of jetting off to Paris and heading to Germany. And, I would go there for 1 week and they would call me and say, we need you to be somewhere for another week. So I, really revel in the fact that, and I didn't realize it was an opportunity at the time, of course, at the time you're just sort of itchy for more and you realize what you have. But I got to really cut my teeth in the heyday of P&G with brands that were revolutionizing categories, specifically femcare. I got to see it turn from a very sleepy category, a category that nobody really wanted to touch, to a category that was selling out of femcare. When we launched Tampax Pearl, we ended up selling out of a specific SKU. And so that's just, the tapestry of my background, which sometimes, it's like I'm now recognizing 25 years later, like this was huge.
25 years later, that is huge, right? Like just the fact that you're selling out a femcare brand is like, what?
Right?
Amazing.
Right. 25 years. I like to tell people I started when I was 4.
Right. No, of course. Right. We're happy, but strategy has changed so much in the last 25 years. Like, I don't even think, was there even a strategy role 25 years ago?
No, it was actually all compartmentalized into like you service the client. You worked on, looking at the vision for the brand. We did partnerships with other agencies, but there wasn't actually tenants to, at least where I worked with, which was LPK in Cincinnati. Yeah. We weren't really, formed as a strategic department. So you were doing all things, I was serving a client services role and I was also leaning into the strategy. I was attending research. At times I was actually hosting research. I was pitching. Like there were so many components to that actual department. And then people started to realize there's an actual need for strategy. You should have focus, you should have discipline, you should have frameworks. And so, I kind of, I think we grew up strategically and I had the opportunity. And then once I started making choices for my career, I realized, I really didn't want to pursue client services. I really wanted to go into strategy. And yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, how interesting. Like it's very much, in the startup world or if you're, just starting out in business, you wear so many different hats, right? You got to wear, the client service hat, the accounting hat, the this hat, the design hat. And I think that is what makes sometimes strategists so well-rounded is like we have to be adaptive, right? We have to roll with the punches, push back when need to, but always come at it with a very objective point of view from the eyes of our customer. And it's, it's been amazing to see, especially after like I think the last 10 years, like the growth curve of strategy roles has just really, really increased. But being a female strategist, I'm sure that had presented its own set of challenges. I mean, 25 years ago, I mean, the industry was a lot different, right? We were much more not as diverse as it is now, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up with looking at the, where I wanted to go. There were only men, they were men and oftentimes British strategists,
Right.
and they, and it like, great, that's amazing. But I didn't have a role model who looked like me or sounded like me, who came to the table and had totally different views on the consumer. So I was definitely looking at it like a mom, or a female user. I was looking at it from a lens of, emotion and and it's not that men can't bring that to the table, but I was definitely not seeing that as I sort of rose through the ranks, which makes me really appreciative. I joined Petermayer because Michelle Edelman bought the agency a year ago, and she is a phenomenal strategist. I mean, she's brilliant. She came up with the Dove campaign, which is Real Beauty. She was the brains behind that. And I had followed her work and actually showcased her work as, part of the, inspiration behind some of the things I was doing. So when this opportunity came up, it was like, of course I will work for a female, 1% female owner, and somebody who is a dynamic strategist who can actually progress my career by leaps and bounds. But I'm really hopeful. I feel there's a ton of diversity coming out in the industry, female and, different ethnicities and different viewpoints and gender. And, I'm just watching this full expression. And that's what, I mean, I say that strategists have to live fully in the hearts and minds of consumers. And it's really hard to do so if you're sort of myopically looking at it through a different one gender or one kind of viewpoint or socioeconomic background or whatever. So yeah, diversity is really important to me.
No, it totally is. And I think it's not just important within the industry. And we'll get back to how the industry it needs to continue to redefine itself and diversify. But I think for the recommendations we make for our clients, and because our customers are not myopic. They're not just looking at things through one lens. They are as diverse as you can ever imagine. And I think that brands are going to be demanding that from the strategists that work on their account to just have a broader viewpoint, right? Not just to be so singular. I love how earlier you said the British strategist, and like it's in my head, it's just like you got that British accent, and for some reason it works, but like, wait a second, why?
Exactly right. Well, the funny part, there was a moment in time a couple years ago when Rob Campbell came up in a conversation and somebody said, Rob Campbell is somebody who's very dynamic. And my goodness, he is a very successful strategist. And, I recognize that I have one sort of lens by which I look at strategy. I really try to be as like diverse, in my thinking. And I try to really look at things in different ways. But I decided that I needed a different kind of mentor. And I reached out to Rob Campbell. He is in New Zealand. He had just moved from Europe to New Zealand. And I asked him, on LinkedIn, hey, would you be my mentor? And he was like, of course. Like that night, he wrote back and said, sure, I'll meet with you. And we had the most amazing, conversations. We just continued to talk. But he was like, Laura, he's like, first of all, I replace every position I move from with a woman because the strategy world needs more women. And he said he put a woman in place when he left Nike as a strategist. He put a woman in place and he said to her, do not marginalize your thinking. You are the person who has the athletic background in the room. You also have a female viewpoint. Do not think don't take that lightly, and don't be sort of pushed around or, sort of compartmentalized in your thinking. Like there's a reason I put you here. So he's been very interesting to talk to and to hear his perspective. He's very much like, you know, the yin to my yang. He
Yeah.
pushes me and he's like, Laura, what if you did this? You know, he has these interesting stories where he actually told me a story where one time where he was trying to figure out what wealth meant when it came to cars, and like we have all different kind of status of cars. And he went out, and this is a Rob Campbell favorite story of mine. He went out and he interviewed a bunch of prostitutes, and he asked the prostitutes, what do you think of as far as these cars? Like, tell us who might be driving this car, what their, you know, financial background might look
Mm.
like, how they might interpret a car as it drove down the street. And first of all, I never would have thought to do that. And it like pushed me out of my own thinking on how to come to really interesting creative insights.
Well, I mean, we're going
Right.
to talk about it all. Like, that's incredible. Like, that's just, oh yeah. Like, think about, like, it makes you think differently. Like, you know, if Apple had $1 for every time somebody said that. um, Incredible. I love also how you just like emailed someone like be my mentor. And I listened to this great podcast by Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite authors. He's behind the Daily Stoic, and then he's written a bunch of other like philosophy books. But he also came from he was the CMO at American Apparel back in the early 2010s when they were just going through their massive growth and everything. And he did a podcast on too many people are asking for permission to have a mentor when you just need to just kind of email someone and assume that whatever they respond back, if they respond back with, like that's part of the relationship of having that mentor mentee, you know. And so to hear you, it's incredible.
I fully believe in it. And I actually have two young kiddos. Not young, they're 15 and 17, about to be 18. And I actually have, you know, invited them to have mentors just to give them perspective on what they might do in their careers. You know, they've been thinking about it, talking about it. And I reached out to, I would say, probably 30, my one kiddo. They really love design and they're really into design. I mean, you can't really, like, Jay is always sort of pen to paper or, you know, having iPad in hand. And I reached out to about 30, 40, I don't even know how many people on LinkedIn who worked at Disney. And I was just curious, like, if anybody would talk to us as a family about what it feels like to be an animator and in design. And this very special human, his name is Nak, N-A-K. He reached out to us right away, and he has been our mentor as a family for about 2 years now. And he talks about AI and what's happening at Disney. He talks about, you know, he gave us this whole thing about how he thinks about shape and language, design language, when he came up with The Incredibles. And he is such a special person.
Wow.
So I have a soft spot. I believe in mentorship. I want to be mentored to other people. So I really invest in that as far as time. But I believe in it for sure.
Incredible. I love the family mentor.
Yeah.
That's what I've been missing this whole time. I'm home, I'm calling my wife. I'm like, Melissa, we need a mentor. And she's like, damn right we do. We have the therapist, but we definitely need a mentor.
That's hilarious.
So what you know, like thinking about this next generation that's coming into the agency world, into the creative realm, into the brand building world, like people just starting out, like what do they want to know? Like, what do you think that they're interested in?
You know, I think that we are having to be more creative with our relationships and our mentorship. So when I, you know, was growing up and cutting my teeth in this industry, I was in person with a lot of people. I got to see social behaviors in person play out right in front of me for 40, 60 hours a week. So I think that people who are coming in this industry need different touch points. You know, they need different Zoom based touch points. They need to be a part of something. And we need more like moments where we're just talking about things. There's no agenda. We're just sharing things openly. So when I took over head of strategy at Petermayer, I have a lot of meetings where we're just chatting about stuff, you know, and like I'm just sharing things that I've seen. I'm having other people share things that they've seen, so that this young generation can hear things that they're not hearing in an office space, you know? So it's like they're coming along on the journey. So I think that's really important. And I hear a lot of younger folks say, like, I need something, I need people to help me
Yeah.
understand, and quickly get up to speed in this new world that we're living in.
Yeah, that the personal connection is just so important. And wow, what a cultural experiment COVID was. I mean,
Right?
100 years from now, oh man, 10 years from now, who's going to be playing the main character in the movie? That's what I want to know.
Exactly.
Obviously, it's going to be Tom Hanks, right? He was the first one that came out and I have COVID. I'm doing this for you all. Like, he's writing the script. He's going to
Oh,
direct it.
oh yeah.
I
Yep.
can't wait.
Oh,
You talked earlier about one of like the main reasons why you joined Petermayer was the female ownership.
yeah.
And like what and how much of a different narrative that is. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages to being a female in the industry? Like what does that bring up? And especially as you get into that leadership, not just a junior creative role, but in the leadership role.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good question. I think that some of the advantages that we have, the way that I'm watching Michelle, and she is, she's not a formal mentor of mine, but I would say that she's an informal mentor.
Yeah.
And I'm watching her, and she spent her whole career as a strategist, and now she's defining what it means to be the future female CEO. And I'm watching her do very different things. They're very nuanced, but I have to say, I'm sort of in love with the idea of the CEO also have a strategic background. I've never experienced that before. Oftentimes CEOs run, sort of rise through the ranks of operations or
Right.
client services or even design, but never have I witnessed a female and a strategist. So I'll give you a couple examples. So she flew me in to get to know the team, and sort of we had this whole sort of couple days of dinner and drinks and breakfasts and meetings, and we got to know each other on a very personal basis before I said yes and they said yes. It was kind of like this really lovely experience where I got to really emotionally connect, and I felt like this was a very heartfelt decision, to be quite honest. And she does that with every person who's a senior leader. She brings them in. They have different sort of connection points to figure out chemistry. And, I think that's a lovely experience to have. She also, because she has a research background and we're all strategists, and we understand sort of that like context, she asks why so many different times. So she doesn't take the answer sort of like the easy answer. She's like, why do we think this is happening? Like, if our audience, that we're talking to is the group of Petermayer, like that's our constituency, why do you think this change in behavior is happening? And so she's not afraid of research. She does a lot of research internally, like just, polls and little, memos out. And she's getting constant feedback. And so therefore we're pivoting quickly. And so I feel like there's just a humanity that, from a female standpoint, it's a different kind of humanity. And it's not that the masculine energy I have worked for in the past hasn't done that. It's just, and I can't decide, there's like the strategist and then there's the female. And there's sometimes they're overlapping. But I think she's kind of defining, redefining what it looks like to be the CEO. And, it's not, sort of dictatorial. It's very much like she is empowering her collective leadership group to really, elevate everyone in the agency. So
She's
it's a
creating that tribe.
Yeah.
She's, and the idea of a tribe is nothing new for us in the industry, in the advertising creative world. But like sometimes at agencies, we preach it all day to our clients. And then you look at the culture of the agency, it's like, fuck, it's just predicated on free beer. Like, that's not a tribe. Like, that's not what I want. They can pay for my own beer at, my leisure.
Right. Exactly.
I love the idea of her like flying everyone in. And you said like it was like this fully immersive, like multi-sensory experience, like and a lot of it's centered on breaking bread, right? Because how you also use the term humanized, like how there's nothing more human than breaking bread with someone, sharing a meal, and just naturally having that ebb and flow of the conversation. That's really where you get to know someone, and I think that
it's super smart. I mean, you're right. It is a very human thing to share a meal together, and you can't really do that virtually. And so she's, when I was interviewing with her, I was asking some really specific questions like, how do you enable your leaders? How do you, make sure that they are equipped with everything so that we're successful? And, she would answer in a very human way. She would be like, I just need to know what you need to do your job really credibly. So it's like, I'm asked for a budget. How do I get all of the folks in strategy happy and
Yeah.
fulfilled, and I fill their cup up? So like, I have a budget every year to make sure that they're going to the right conferences, that they're fulfilled. I give them, each person in our department actually has a webinar that they're curating and they're doing proprietary research against. We call them big wins or big moments in the agency. Every person in our department makes sure that they have a big win or a big at bat. So by her leadership, it is coming right through to me, and I'm able to then just empower everybody on the team. Everybody
Yeah.
should feel, hopefully, like they're also empowered, that their portfolios are being developed, that they're being developed as human beings, and that, they're getting award-winning opportunities.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so it's refreshing to hear, as I throughout my career bounced around for so many different agencies. This seems to be like just the narrative that you don't hear often. And it's so refreshing. So we're talking about like female leaders, but how can your male counterparts support you and support her vision in this? Because I know that I don't want to use the word tension, but obviously, like, there's always going to be like the naysayers who don't want change, and advertising is rooted in history and the anchors that be. So how can people, how can myself, I join an agency, let's say, how can I support DE&I initiatives and diversity initiatives even further than just saying, I support this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I feel like that is, first of all, asking the question, like, how can I, it goes a long way, just even being open to the conversation. I think that there's vulnerability in just having those conversations and asking those questions. And that's just the start of it, is just that vulnerability of like, I don't know what I don't know. So somebody just asked me recently, because it is Pride Month, they said, Laura, we just want to get a quote from you on what brands should be doing around Pride Month. Well, I felt like I couldn't really answer that question authentically. Like, I have an opinion, but I went to one of my trans friends and I said, like, I'm just curious from your take, like, what does Pride Month mean to you? And like, how can brands be doing better? And he was like, you know what? Like, let's make it more than just a month. I love to see a flag hanging out of a bricks and mortar, company or business all year long.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't just rainbow wash things, actually walk the walk and talk the talk, like do both, and like, in a time where we've witnessed some brands sort of misstepping with some of the, diversity and inclusion opportunities for their brand, my fear is that brands are going to pull back. So there's a vulnerability in sort of leaning forward, but also asking the right questions to the right people who are, authentically coming from a source that, you can trust.
What a rainbow wash was great. That's a great line, by the way. It's almost like the green wash, right? If you're talking about sustainability, and you can insert any kind of movement here, and it could happen. But it's like the same thing with breast cancer awareness month. It's the same thing with Black History Month. Like, why can't we just make this the norm of things that we support? It doesn't have to be so label driven of, well, it's not October, can't wear a pink ribbon or whatever it is. Like, that's ridiculous.
Right. I like to tell brands, like, when you're starting to plan your upcoming fiscal year, make that like part of your planning. Don't wait until June to be like, we got a t-shirt, and then make something, a brand logo,
right,
rainbow. Like, don't do that. Like, start with your planning and be like, what can we do inherently? You know, is it hiring practices? Is it
Yeah.
training? Is it, you know, a productization of something?
Yeah.
Is what is it that you need to do that you're authentically going all in on? And hopefully it starts with a strategy. Like, this is what is white space opportunity. This is what consumers are yearning for. And then you fill that white space opportunity with initiatives, and they happen to roll out at a certain time of year versus like, you know, being like, okay, here we are, we're this month, and now we have a social feed requirement.
Right. Like being proactive versus being reactive, because you could see through reactiveness. I love how you just brought up, I didn't even plan to go about brand planning, right? And brand planning is so important. And I feel like I used to do a lot of work in pharma. They loved the brand plan. Like, they were all about the brand planning. Like, now it's brand planning season. It's like, like pool season, right? You got to get ready for it. But then there are other industries where they should be brand planning, and they don't. They're just rolling by the seat of their pants. So you just brought up such a huge topic to any business owner out there, or even agency owner. Like, start having that conversation sooner. You always have to be planning, because when something that comes up like a Pride Month, or you get asked, all of a sudden there's the demand from your audience. Right. You don't want to be left behind. And I just like that reactiveness. It comes off as inauthentic, number one. Like, and your customers are going to see right through that. And trust me, you're not the only one out there. There's another competitor right next, ready to take that customer.
Right. And brand planning also helps agencies. If you want the best work from your agency, start getting ahead of all your initiatives, because what I look for is like, all right, is this a $3 million or a $5 million scope of business for the upcoming year? Then I'm going to be hiring people and thinking about like who I have on first to be the best curators of those, projects. And we're looking ahead and going, this is a big moment for the brand. This is a big moment for the brand. And so you don't realize how much planning, actually, your brand planning helps you immensely. You are going to get the best work from your agency, because they're going to be like fully staffed and ready, kind of almost like itching for those things coming up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. All right, so for me, like, I couldn't wait to ask this question. It's the pink elephant in the room. Who is Petermayer?
Okay. Yeah, I should have probably started with that.
Who is this Peter gentleman?
Petermayer. So 50 years ago, Petermayer opened an agency in New Orleans. So every time we say that we work for New Orleans, people are like, oh my God, I love that city.
Yeah.
So Petermayer is, he's a bedrock in the agency world, specifically in New Orleans. And then he had two sons, and they actually took over the agency before they sold it to Michelle. But Petermayer has been around for 50 years. And, working with the likes of Hancock Whitney and just all sorts of brands that are located in the South. And now I would say we're at that sort of moment where we're going national, and we're starting to win national brands. So we had a Petoskey win a couple months ago. We just won the entire Delaware North brand, where we're going to be working. Like, this is hugely, important to me, but all the national parks are coming up. Cool. Yeah. We have a Louisiana tourism campaign coming out, and we have got a bunch of things I can't speak of right now on the horizon that are going to start. Our goal is to be beyond New Orleans. It's going to be a national presence. And we actually have a distributed workforce now. So only, I'd say, about 65% of our agency is located in New Orleans. And the rest, we're starting to formulate pockets in Cincinnati and Chicago and in Texas and Florida. And so you can kind of see, the trajectory is that we eventually will be Small Agency of the Year winners, and that we'll keep moving on, and our goal is pretty big. So
cool. I can't wait to continue to follow the journey. What's the one thing though with Petermayer? Like, what's the one thing?
Yeah. The one thing I would say that we do so incredibly well is that we are strategists at heart. We are led by a strategist. So I would start there. So strategically led, it is imbued in everything that we do. I would say that we're also really multicultural. So we also have 1% Chief Creative Officer, Matt Catan. And, he is bringing an entire lens of diversification to our portfolio and to our staff. So our numbers with our DE&I initiative just keep climbing. And every time, we're hiring, it's like the diverse pool of thinkers and, backgrounds and, et cetera. It's just building. So that is a huge vision for our agency as well. And then I would say third, we are huge into travel and tourism.
Yeah.
We've got a bedrock there of knowledge and expertise. We are, bar none, I've not seen it before, travel and tourism experts.
That's not a bad place to be an expert. I'm just gonna say.
Not really at all. It's I love traveling. I just got back from Chicago on a business trip. Then I flew right to Montreal. My kiddo and I did just a weekend in Montreal, just experiencing croissants and the French Parisian experience in Montreal. I love traveling, and it's definitely near and dear to my heart. So it's not terrible.
No, and I'm going to go on a limb and say those who have experienced other cultures make great strategists, make great creatives, right? Especially if that travel has taken you not just outside of your backyard, but across borders.
Yes.
Canada, Mexico, right? Super simple, but Europe and Asia, when you could really empathize and start to understand how, number one, we're all connected as human beings, but number two, how, just to watch people interact and how they consume everything from a croissant to a cup of coffee to content, like it just makes you a better thinker. So
you're exactly. Yeah.
So cool. Well, I am so happy, Laura, that we had the opportunity to chat. Tell everyone how they can get in touch with you or Petermayer. Where do you live on the internet?
Yeah, so Petermayer, there's an A in there, so look for that. You'll find our website. You can find me on LinkedIn, Laura Thomas, Head of Strategy at Petermayer. And I look forward to connecting. I really do respond to everything that is given to me, and any kind of hello, mentorship inquiries. I respond to everything. So please reach out.
Absolutely. And for more on the Talking with Branders podcast, go to brandersmagazine.com. And if you want to know anything about me and my little world, stephenpicanta.com. And until next time, see ya.